Sup y'all, it's me, it's your boy Asmongold, and I have waited to do this video for so long, and the day has finally come. Let's talk about the Legion endgame. Now today was the first day of BlizzCon, and I brought a ton of really cool new shit about Legion, and I cannot wait to talk to you guys about it. Now one thing I do want to say before I get into the video is my throat is really sore, and so that's why I'm not yelling and going ape shit about this, but in my head I am. Just want to let you guys know that. Now we're firstly going to talk about the leveling process just real short, because I mean, let's be real, leveling process is going to be like 10 hours, and the end game is going to be like 1,000 hours, probably more than that with how good these changes are. So leveling, let's go through it. There's basically going to be, like, long story short, the leveling zones are going to scale with your level. So like if a person who's like level 102 wants to quest with somebody who's 105, they can play together and nobody loses, everybody wins. And so that's really great for playing with your friends. Also, it's going to allow people to pretty much neckbeard it up and go through an entire quest line, get immersed, get into the story, rather than going halfway through the quest line and having to go to another zone because you already out-leveled the zone that you're already in. I think both of these changes are really great, and I'm very happy about them. I think that you can also attempt the different zones in whatever order that you want, and so lots of freedom, lots of choice, and the scaling things are, I think all of the leveling changes are going to be really great, and adding on to what they did in Lords of Draenor with like kind of revamping the leveling experience with the treasures and all that stuff. I mean, I can only imagine that the leveling in Legion is going to be even better. Now let's talk about the end game. Now, one way for me to explain pretty much how the end game is going to be working in Legion is, imagine if you guys know the expansion Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls was just renamed to World of Warcraft Legion. That's pretty much what's going on. They're adding greater rifts into WoW, and they're also adding bounties into WoW. Neither of these are bad things. And so let's first talk about the world events, because that's what I'm pretty sure most people are pretty much most excited for. Now in Guild Wars 2, I remember watching over one of my buddy's shoulders, is they had like these different events that happened, throughout the just the time playing in the game, and they're like just different invasions and stuff like that. My understanding is that they're adding these into Legion, and some of them will be week-long events, some of them will be just for a day, I think, and depending on how long it's out and how difficult the event is, you're going to get more or less of a reward. Also, gathering professions get their own specific events that they can do on top of the normal events, and so that's always great. There's also probably going to be a thing where if you haven't done some of the events, you haven't logged on for a while, they'll pile up, and so you can kind of catch up that way. I think all of these changes are really good, especially with that catch-up mechanic, with like kind of not allowing people to get too far behind. Now, also, they are going to be adding bounties into WoW, and I mean adding bounties into WoW, I don't mean like Diablo 3, I mean Diablo 3. Like the user interface is the same, the map interface is the same. Everything is pretty much entirely the same, and I would pretty much assume that it's going to be almost verbatim the same as Diablo 3. There have been a lot of people who have been, I guess, upset about some of the changes that they made to the game, about like kind of making it more or less like Diablo 3. And I share and don't share those concerns as well. But I do think that a lot of the changes that they're adding into Legion here, taking those like really great core elements for replayability and content that they had in Diablo 3 and adding them into WoW, I think that's going to be great. And so the bounties are pretty much going to allow people to go out into the world. And so what this is really going to do is it's going to make it to where people have to go back out into the world. They're not just sitting in the main city, Dalaran, again, that's what our main city is going to be again, by the way. Not just sitting in Dalaran, AFK, like looking at cat pictures on the internet. They're out there, killing the Legion, doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? And so I'm pretty glad about that. And honestly, I think that's probably one of the biggest things, and probably going to be the most popular thing, just because a lot of people don't really do group content. Everybody is pretty much just solo content in one form or another, and so I do think the bounties, it's going to be really important for Blizzard to make sure the bounties are as rewarding and great as possible. Now, I think at the beginning here, we can expect to see the bounties all over Broken Isles. Will we see bounties expanded into maybe Draenor, into Pandaria? I don't really think that we'll see them in Draenor because alternate timeline, or maybe even Eastern Kingdoms or Kalimdor. Like, I think it would be really cool to have to go back to Westfall because the Harvest Watchers went fucking crazy, and so you got to deal with them. Like, I honestly, I think these are are really good changes. And on top of that, one of the big things that they're going to be doing, and also one thing I do want to say, is that world bosses are also going to be tied to these like bonus objectives. I'm trying to read them right now. It's all this stuff is on MMO Champion because as I said before, today was the first day of BlizzCon, and so apparently some of them are also PvP related, and I'm not sure really. Like I think that'll probably be like rare objectives where it'll be like 1 week and like let's say fucking Ragnaros is back for whatever reason, and you got like stomp him back into the ground, and so maybe you might have to do that. Just all these different objectives that you have to go around the Broken Isles to do. And what's really important about that is getting people out, getting people exploring, getting people going through that content. Right now in Wards of Draenor, after you complete all of the treasures, all of the rares and everything, and there's not even really that much of an incentive to do those, but after you do those, there's not really much reason to keep doing the to keep going around the world, and it's kind of a disappointment. A lot of the WoD zones, Draenor zones, are really great design. I think Frostfire Ridge and Gorgrond are great, and it's a shame that more people don't go around them more often and get to enjoy them. And so adding these things into the game, and I think that one of the core elements that's going to make or break this system that's being added is the rewards, and making sure that rewards are not too compelling, but they're also good enough for pretty much people from all different walks of the Warcraft life to enjoy. And so maybe like currency rewards, maybe mounts, that kind of stuff that people can get into, and maybe also some gear rewards. Since they don't have a cap on Valor right now, and I think we'll probably see Valor moving into the next expansion, if these bounties can give Valor points, I think that would be a really good thing that could happen. Now, on top of that, that's pretty much what's happening with bounties. Now, on top of that, they're also adding greater rifts into WoW, and I do just mean literally greater rifts. Like you literally get a keystone, and whenever you complete the greater rift, which is the dungeon, with that keystone in the time allotted, you get to upgrade the keystone. Like there's not even an illusion that it's any different. It is literally the exact same. And I mean, like Diablo 3 keeps people neckbearding it out for at least for months, right? And so probably a good idea, especially like adding it in with all of WoW's like its other draws. And so what they're going to be doing is that they're going to be challenge mode dungeons as we know them, my best knowledge, will no longer exist. Challenge mode dungeons are going to be revamped, and they're going to be basically greater rifts. You're going to go into the challenge mode dungeon, and by the way, they're going to be 10 dungeons right now. We're going to be talking about, I guess, like the potential of adding new dungeons later on after I go over pretty much what's going on here, though. You go into the dungeon and you complete the dungeon, and you get these keystones through a number of different events. They haven't really said like, okay, what is for sure the thing that you're going to get them from. They talked about bonus objectives, like world objectives, maybe world bosses, stuff like that. I'm not sure exactly how you're going to get the keystones, but it appears to me that you have to do other content besides the dungeons in order to get the keystones for the dungeons, which I think that will be ultimately probably a good thing, just again to get people doing more stuff. It might not be. We'll see how it goes. Like beta is not even out yet, so again, we'll see how it goes. Anyway, after that, you're going to go ahead and get this keystone, and you can use this keystone to unlock basically a challenge mode dungeon. Now, these challenge mode dungeons will scale indefinitely, and so this is basically infinite content to the extent that you don't get bored of running the dungeon in itself. Now, the dungeons will scale, as I said, up, and they're not just going to be scaled, in terms of damage. They're also going to have different affixes. Now, if you've played Path of Exile, you'd understand what maps are. Now, maps are basically randomly generated dungeons. So, I mean, obviously, these are not going to be randomly generated, but they're going to be affixes. And so, like, Path of Exile, sometimes you just consistently take damage. Sometimes mobs just do a lot more damage. And some of the affixes that they're talking about, this would be potential affixes for these challenge mode dungeons in Legion, is like the mobs will enrage at 30% health to do 100% extra damage. There'll be a consistent dot on your on all players throughout the I guess like the run of the dungeon. And also what's one of the other ones? Oh, and the corpses explode after the mobs die, shortly after the mobs die. And so all of these things kind of make the dungeon new, kind of keep things fresh. And my understanding also is that the affixes will rotate per week, and so it's never going to be just one way or another. Also, I think that some keystones will have certain affixes attached to them in the same way that they do with maps and Path of Exile. I'm not entirely sure about that because, again, this is just all from one day. And so the timer, they want to make sure that the dungeon is not based on speed, but it's based on combat and making sure that you're able to effectively deal with problems. Now, I personally don't think that that's going to work out just because people are going to push it to the limit in terms of damage, and then they're always going to be running out of time. And so I'm not sure exactly how making it, like giving it a timer, but then say it's not really as important that it's timed, is going to work out at higher levels. And for people who are not really skilled, whenever people are pushing themselves to the limit, I think that the limiting factor will be time. However, if you don't complete the dungeon within the time allotted, you will still get the loot from the dungeon. I think that's a really good change too. So that means like you don't finish the dungeon and you spent like, let's say maybe 20, 30 minutes in there and you're fucked, right? You don't have anything to show for it except for a wasted keystone and 30 lost minutes. So both of those things are really great. Also, they're going to give you like what they called a jackpot at the end of the week based on your best time. Now, a jackpot, I think, is probably going to be a currency reward or some sort of reward that is not directly an item. I could be wrong, of course, but it seemed to me like it will probably be like some sort of maybe Valor points, the new version of affixes crystals, gold, the new something like garrison resources, something that's not necessarily actual like a piece of gear. But I don't know. Maybe they will give you a piece of gear. It could be like the Invaders strong boxes. With what are they? With garrison invasions. And so anyway, that's really cool too. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's really I guess like here to talk about. No, okay, this is also I think that I've basically gone over what the changes are, and so I want to kind of give some input I guess like to you guys to like kind of discuss these changes and what I think is positive and negative about them. Now, positives, almost all of these things are positive. The negatives are what I could see being the emergent gameplay coming out of them. And so we're talking about like if you only have, well, this is also not really an emergent gameplay thing, but the dungeons will, I guess, like become repetitive to people because there are only 10 dungeons. I don't really know how they could fix this, but honestly, and also because they will always scale up, there will never really be a pressing reason for Blizzard to add new dungeons into the game throughout the course of Legion. And so hopefully they do, but without them having a real incentive to, I don't really know if that's possible. However, there were 9 dungeons in Pandaria, and there were 8 in Wards of Draenor, and now there are 10 in Legion, and so that's more than we've had in the previous 2 expansions. So that's also very good. One of the emergent gameplay problems that I could see coming out of this is because they're saying that it could actually entirely replace raiding, because whenever it scales to a certain level, it would become better than raid gear. I think that we could run into a problem with people only doing these dungeons and not really going into like mythic raids or something like that, because a mythic raiding, like I've always thought that like raiding, like most of the difficulty that comes out of raiding is actually getting 20 people in the instance at the same time and not trying to kill each other. And so what I mean by that is that the coordination and like kind of the behind the scenes, the structure of the guild and setting up a guild and getting everybody together and the organization is one of the main I guess like challenges, and also whenever it succeeds, rewards of raiding. And I think that's what people really got out of raiding and do get out of raiding. I remember, succeeding as a team, I think is something that everybody wants to do, nearly everybody. A lot of people who do like to raid and play competitive games and, all that stuff. And so, creating an easier, I guess like alternative for people to do that might, I guess like kind of undercut one of the main values of WoW, which is kind of getting that reward out of playing and succeeding with a large group of people. Now, I know that not everybody raids and not everybody gets that out of it, but whenever and I guess like, as I always say, like water flows downhill and people are always going to choose the easiest option. And so if the easiest option is to just do, like basically these challenge mode dungeons on a certain level, they're going to choose to do that instead of actually, going into the raids. And so it could potentially hurt raiding, and I don't really know how that'll change it, but I think that all that stuff will be, we'll have to wait and see. I think that one thing that would be good is if they do continue adding in kind of like the thing where your raid gear isn't quite as, I'm trying to think of, like the beginning bosses in like a raid are not, they don't drop as good a gear as the end bosses in the raid. If they had the top level mythic gear from the dungeons only drop like the bottom level of the mythic gear, I think that could potentially work. But again, I just don't really know, and also we don't know how these dungeons are going to scale, and so it could be like mathematically impossible to complete a dungeon on the level that would reward the mythic level gear, and so all these things are kind of unknown to us. However, I will say this: these changes are really great, and I'm really glad to see them. I think that WoD had a big problem with like kind of getting people to do the content. There's a lot of content. I don't really want to say there's a lot of content in WoD, but there's a lot of content in WoD that people didn't have an incentive to do. They don't have an incentive to do right now. Mythic dungeons are not really very useful for most people until 6.2.3 comes out for Valor points. Let's see, Hymal and Blackrock Foundry are basically irrelevant, and so having these challenge mode dungeons, kind of having them be able to scale up infinitely will give these dungeons basically a lifespan for as long as they want them to have a lifespan, and I think that would be really great. Now, could we see this happening with older raids? That would be really cool. I mean, I'm not talking about like a Karazhan or like Molten Core or something, but let's say like the first, I think the first raid is like the Emerald Nightmare. Yeah, the Emerald Nightmare. And could we see like maybe towards the end of the of Legion expansion, the Emerald Nightmare having some sort of challenge mode or an affix that you can use on the dungeon to make it more difficult, to maybe get some sort of other reward out of the raid, and so people can go back to it with with it being more difficult. Maybe, yeah. I mean, I think that would be really cool. And having these things to where you can, I guess, like apply affixes and go through the dungeons and make them a little bit harder is it does add a lot of content. Now, it does also conflict with the problem of players feeling like they have mastery over certain content. I think that it's a very big reward for people to go through something and be able to go through it very easily because they've achieved so much and they've accomplished so much and they have such good gear that they can go through this no problem. And having things scale up infinitely kind of does remove that sense of mastery. And so I don't really know how that will play out, and I think it's a very delicate balance between creating this this infinite scaling content and also making players feel like they're actually accomplishing something and moving forward, and not just in this feedback loop of repeating the same thing just a little bit harder like we've had with Hellfire Citadel. They have not talked a lot about the raids and how many different raid tiers and difficulties there are going to be, and so I don't really want to speculate on that too much, but I don't really know, honestly. As I said, I don't really want to speculate on it too much. Also, I think that we can pretty much expect to not see Mythic dungeons in Legion because they're going to be replaced with these challenge mode dungeons. We're going to see probably 3 difficulties, normal, heroic, and challenge mode will scale all the way up as high as you want it to. So again, let's wrap up here and I guess I not really go over things too much, but leveling is going to be scaled up, and so you can leveling zones scale up with your level to an extent, and so that's great. For you to finish up the dungeons, or sorry, the quest lines, and not level them and go to another zone. They're adding world events into the game, a lot like I think Guild Wars 2, and also primarily like Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls. And also on top of that, they're making challenge modes basically the equivalent of greater rifts in Diablo 3. And so all of these changes are really, really great, and I'm really excited to see them. Beta should be coming out in a few weeks, that's what I hear. And so I cannot wait to show you guys this stuff whenever it gets live, but don't really know if it probably won't be out whenever I first get the beta. But I cannot wait to do it, and I really hope that all this stuff makes it into the game. And honestly, guys, that's pretty much all I got. So I hope that you guys are excited as I am. Again, I am very excited. I just don't want to start yelling because my throat will start hurting. So again, I hope that you guys enjoyed, and I hope that you're excited as I am. So thanks for watching, and like, comment, subscribe.